Welcome back to Behind the Play. My name is Alex Adams, and I'm joined once again by someone who knows the Calgary Flames very well. Coming on for the second time, Eric Francis of Sportsnet. Thanks so much, Eric, for taking the time. It's not like it's busy times in Flamesland, so I do really appreciate you coming on.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me, Alex.
Before we get to the Flames, I just wanted to kind of ask you a little bit. I think we talked about it a bit last time, but now I'm covering the Ottawa Senators and in the dressing room and doing all that kind of stuff. What advice would you have for me? And maybe what kind of did you learn throughout your years of how to cultivate relationships with players, management, and the like?
Yeah, you kind of use you buried the word in there, relationships. Like, I think that our business is like almost any other business. It's really all about relationships. And I think that too many of our colleagues don't quite understand that. It really is about cultivating relationships, in the front office, uh, even with the training staff, with the players. The more people you get to know and they respect you and you respect them, the more information flow that there is on a daily basis and on a monthly and annually basis. So I just think work on those relationships. I mean, there's only so much you can do in terms of getting close to players, and you don't want to be their buddy or anything like that. But you do want them to know that you can just have a normal conversation. Too many times the relationships are always just with a tape recorder in your hand, and it's always on. I think it's important to just grab guys when they just get off the ice. When the scrum's over here and everybody's talking to that guy, I want to be over there talking to everybody else. That's kind of my goal. So, and then just building relationships, talking to them about whatever. I always remember one of the toughest nuts to crack was Miikka Kiprusoff.
Yep.
The guy never liked talking to the media, rarely talked to the media, found a million ways to duck the media, then pretended he couldn't speak English very well. There was a million ways that he would go about it, and it was always comical. But I'll never forget one day finding common ground with him on street fighting. He loved this guy named Kimbo Slice,
Oh, yeah.
since deceased. And anyway, he was debuting on NBC, and it was a whole thing. And oh my God, it was like I'd met a new man. I mean, I just somehow Kimbo Slice came out of my mouth, and next thing I know, we had a half-hour conversation about street fighting. You never know what these guys are all about, but that's why you have to get to know them. So that would be my advice.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'll try to see if the next generation of, at least with the Senators, like MMA or something like that. So
It's amazing. Like, when I first got into business, like almost 30 years ago, I was the same age as all the players. So we talked about completely different things than I try to talk to them about now.
Yeah.
And it just evolves or devolves, whatever, however we get older. So yeah, ask them about UFC. It's amazing how much they like that stuff.
Awesome. That's on my bucket list for tomorrow at practice, so I got that. Eric, obviously huge news in Flames land with Nikita Zadorov being traded to the Canucks for a third round pick and a fifth round pick. How would you maybe grade that trade for the Flames and just talk about the trade itself?
I think it's a good trade for the Calgary Flames. I don't think anyone's overwhelmed by the return. And I know in Calgary, people are largely disappointed with the return. We live in a world with, online hyperbole, people, losing control, people who've never been in a dressing room who are reporting things or throwing things out there. There was somehow a belief that Zadorov was going to land this team a first-round draft pick. I mean, it blows my mind that people would think that. He's a fifth defenseman who makes way too much money for a guy playing in that role. Hey, he's a solid defenseman, and he's going to be a nice addition for the Vancouver Canucks. And I am not throwing shade on him. I'm just saying people needed to be a little more realistic. Flames acquired him 3 years ago for a third-round draft pick. He's worth barely more than that right now. He's got a third rounder and a fifth rounder. I think people are just upset because the third rounder isn't until 2026. People are impatient. They don't want to wait for things in life. I get that. That's the world we live in now. And what people don't understand who are criticizing the trade also don't understand is opening up cap spaces is the key part of this move. That's like gold. That's a huge asset to have when you're moving forward. and they never retained any of Nikita Zadorov's salary, which is also huge in this because you have 3 slots in which you can retain salary in a trade. This just sets them up for the 3 bigger trades that they're potentially going to have to make this year with Lindholm. There's Lindholm, Tanev, and Noah Hanifin, and you may want to retain some salary there because then the return would be even greater. So this was a really good move by Craig Conroy. It's interesting that he has to navigate a world that's really quite upset with him for making the trade when he did. It's at the end of the day, fans often overvalue their own players. They don't realize that in the grand scheme of things, many of their players who they covet and really start to fall in love with or really admire, they're not as good as they think they are. So we just found that out.
Well, with that, you kind of intimated that, those 3 slots for salary retention might be going to the 3 UFAs in terms of Lindholm, Hanifin, and Tanev. But the Flames have been on a winning streak of sorts and really climbing up the standings, finally back to 500. Like, how does that affect those guys' futures in Calgary? Does that elevate the chances that those guys get signed? Like, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's the obvious question. I think they've got the Flames and these players have some major decisions to make in the new year. I don't think that this Zadorov trade kickstarts a domino effect where all these other guys are going to get traded in the next coming days or weeks. I still think because the Calgary Flames have turned their season around and are playing really good hockey, they're 8-3-2 over the last little stretch. I think that, they want to see what this team is capable of. And yes, it makes it even harder to trade away core pieces like Tanev and Hanifin. I mean, each one of them scored last night in their really dramatic overtime come from behind win against Dallas. But, at the end of the day, they love these guys. They love the young guys coming up and seeing these veterans. They're great role models, all 3 of those guys. I still think at least one of them is going to stay with the team long term. But if they keep winning, maybe there's a chance 2 of them will stay with the team long term. So it's going to be very interesting over the next, I'll say, 6 weeks to see how this team plays, and then in following that, how they act as a front office.
What are the chances any of those guys get to free agency in terms of, I think a lot of Flames fans think about Johnny Gaudreau, of course, and Matthew Tkachuk. Like, how likely do they let those guys go to free agency?
I would say there's like 10% chance that any of them get to play out their season this year and then just walk into free agency. Craig Conroy said that in his opening press conference that we cannot have another Johnny Gaudreau situation. And even though none of these players are of the same caliber with Johnny Gaudreau, they're still all impactful players. So he's made it very clear he won't do that. This game is all about asset management. I can't imagine any of them would be allowed to do that. Now, I can envision one of them or maybe 2 of them signing with the Flames, changing their mind and saying, you know what, the grass isn't always greener somewhere else. I do like it here. We are building something pretty cool. That's a possibility as well. So there's a better chance that one of those guys will sign than there is that they'll just walk into free agency.
Of those guys, like, which one do you think is the most likeliest to stay? Like, or maybe just update on the contract status of like contract negotiations of Lindholm, Hanifin, and Tanev.
I personally think the guy with the best chance of staying is Tanev. I think he likes it here. I mean, he's absolutely beloved here. Guys over the last couple of days, because he blocked a shot with his face and avoided crazy injury. I've heard 2 players say he's the best teammate they've ever played with. Even if this Flames team is retooling, and that's what they're probably going to do in the next 6 weeks or so, you still want your core players. You still want your leaders. You still want guys to teach the youngsters how to play. And there's no better guy, no better role model in that room than Chris Tanev. So, and in terms of contract updates, the Calgary Flames, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I reported that they had frozen all contract talks, and all that's just on hold right now while they see what they have here. Now, that's not to say that they couldn't come up with a deal really quickly or change tack on that, but for now, everything's kind of on hold.
Sounds like kind of like until the deadline looms, then that's really when contract negotiations probably ramp up, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think so. And there's the Zadorov trade. I don't think, all this stuff can be they can kick the can down the road for at least another month or even 2 on signing these guys or trading them. The trade deadline actually works in their favor in terms of other teams being able to afford guys and also putting pressure on other teams. Now you run the risk, of course, that one of these guys would get injured. If that's the case, then maybe you really push hard at signing them long term. I don't know. The Flames have lots of options, and there's no rush. The one thing I will say about Craig Conroy, I do subscribe to the belief that he deserves a lot of credit for being patient, because a lot of times over the last 6 months, he could have shown a little impatience, and it could have hurt them.
Mm-hmm. With that, obviously I'll go to the team on the ice, because that's what you cover day in and day out, and obviously they've been rolling back and coming back with as you said, 8-3-2 in their last 13 games. So what do you think has been kind of the catalyst for this team to return to form?
Well, they'll tell you that what turned their season around, because they lost 6 in a row at one point early on. They'll tell you that it was the injection of youth, the youthful exuberance, the energy that these young guys brought. Conor Zary and Martin Pospisil have really taken this team by storm. In some cases, Zary's been their best player, and it's been quite an amazing jump for both of them. I think everybody was hoping they would be everyday NHLers, but I don't think anybody knew or had any thought that it would happen this year or happen this effectively this fast. So that they have been incredible revelations for this team. And I think it cushions the blow for fans who know that they're probably going to lose core players in like Lindholm and Hanifin, to know that these youngsters can jump in and be difference makers. So that they've been a big part of the turnaround. Their goaltending has been really good from the start of the season. And, offensively, their leading scorer, I think, has 6 goals right now. That's like abysmal. But there are like 12 guys who have between 4 and 6 goals on the team. Their defensive scoring, like, I could go on and on, but the turnaround has been significant, to the point where last night the coach admitted, we've got some momentum going right now. And like, there's a feeling over the last 2 or 3 games, they're down in the third period almost every game. And there's always this feeling that they're going to score. And last year they had 2 third period comebacks all season long. This year they've had 5 already. So there's a resilience to this team. That's the buzzword around here right now, resilience. This team, in this 13-game run that I just cited, 8-5-2, they've only scored the first goal in the game twice. So they're battling back. All the games they've won, they were behind at one point. So full marks to them. There's a lot of character in that room right now.
Yeah, and with that, like Conor Zary, like I saw that chance last night where he almost went around the whole team and scored.
Yeah.
Like, that was pretty sick. Do you see him as like the next top line center for this team, like number 1 center, or just where do you see him, and how amazing has his start to the season been with 10 points in 13 games?
Yeah, on a point per game average, he's only behind one guy in the rookie race, and I think you know who that is. So it's interesting. He's got to keep doing it, though, and there's a lot of people who don't think he can keep doing this, score at this pace. But I'll tell you what, that move, there were a couple moves he flashed last night, some inside out, and Nazem Kadri said those moves take courage, because if they don't work, puck's going back the other way pretty quickly, but also you can look pretty stupid. And I think everybody admires that courage, because it's entertaining, and man, it shows a poise that I didn't think this kid had at all, let alone in the NHL in his first 15 games. So the future for Zary, I don't know. I certainly don't want to limit him. I still don't think I see him as a top line center, but he's playing on the wing right now with Kadri, fits in perfectly there. So I could see him he's a second line winger right now. It's amazing, and he's productive. So I guess I shouldn't discount the possibility that one day he could easily be a top line guy.
And with the youngsters, I actually watched Dustin Wolf in his only game this year in Ottawa, alongside Julian McKenzie. And I thought, even though his, the scoreboard and the stats didn't look remarkable, I thought he looked really confident, really poised in the net. How likely will he get more of a shot? Obviously, Dan Vladar is the backup, hasn't been great, although played well, I think, against Vegas recently. But just what do you think is kind of up with the Wolf situation, and when will he get a chance on this Flames roster?
I think he'll still get a handful of games this year, but hey, this team's in win now mode, and they think that Dan Vladar and Markstrom give them the best chance to win now. And I don't see that changing. I know everybody in the world wants the trade to happen. And I think everybody in the world agrees that Dustin Wolf's the best goaltender on the planet that's not playing in the NHL. There's no question about it. With the stats he's put up, he's been, the top goalie in his league each of the last 4 years. I mean, that's incredible. I'm not sure anyone's ever done that in NHL history or in hockey history. So he's going to be here. But, and I do believe next year he'll be here full time starting the season. But this year, I still think that Vladar is going to be the guy from now until the end of the year. Now, there are teams around the league like Edmonton and other teams that really could use a goaltender. And I think that if the price was right, then they would trade Vladar to one of those teams. Although I know Craig Conroy doesn't want to trade with Edmonton. But, Vladar's numbers haven't been great this year either. But, man, you alluded to it the other night. He absolutely stole 2 points against the defending cup champs. So that people see that around the league and go, yeah, maybe this guy could be a starter on our team.
Obviously, Jonathan Huberdeau has, been a point of contention for the Flames fans ever since he's got there. But he seems to be gaining a bit of steam with his play of late. I think he's tied for the most points on this team right now. Just how close do you see his game right now to maybe returning to where he was at when he was on the Florida Panthers?
I don't see him ever returning to where he was at with the Florida Panthers. I haven't seen anything that makes me believe, like, if there wasn't statistical proof that he got 115 points in the season, I wouldn't believe it. Nobody in Calgary could ever believe that because we see no signs of a guy who's a point-a-game player in the National Hockey League, like nothing. If I were to rank the forwards on this team this year, I would say he's probably been their 8th or 9th best forward this year. Which obviously is unacceptable. So, he's a classy guy. We all like him. He's working so hard to try and get through this. He has been better of late. I'll give him that for sure. He's fitting in with Backlund and Coleman on the third line. But long term, that's not where they want to see him. And he doesn't want to be there long term either. He needs to be out there producing points. So better, but still not good enough.
And obviously Ryan Huska, benched him earlier in the year. He's made some bold choices. They were off to a poor start. The sky's falling. But obviously they've regained themselves a little bit. Just how would you evaluate Ryan Huska's job so far as Flames coach?
I think he's come as advertised. And I know people outside of Calgary don't even know what that means, but he's a communicator. The players love him and they respect him. But he's also very demanding. Obviously what was missing in here for the last several years was communication from Daryl Sutter. And this guy's come in and he provides it in spades, not just with the players, but with the media and for the fan bases. He's always explaining everything to everybody. And he's, 10 games into this season, they'd won 2 games and they were on a 6-game losing streak. And I bet there were a lot of people thinking, oh my God, this guy's NHL career is over before it's even began. But I think, people in Calgary knew that he wasn't getting fired this year. But boy, it was a rocky start. And again, I give him full credit for turning that ship around, using a ton of patience. He didn't panic. I think Ryan Huska deserves a ton of credit. Listen, I'm not going to tout him for coach of the year or anything like that right now. But if this team does make the playoffs, especially after the start they made, I think he's, that's the kind of guy who's got to be in that discussion. I'm getting way ahead of myself here. But I will say that he's been impressive.
You had a really cool article about Michael Backlund and the leadership he's shown just kind of as the captain for, in his first year as the captain. Just what have you seen from him around the team? And what do you think he's brought to the Flames as a captain this season?
Without a captain the last couple of years, this is a team that had no way to kind of communicate with the coach. The captain is the guy who goes in and out of the room. Or captain goes in and out of the coach's room and is the bridge between the two. But this is a guy who has been an incredible leader. He's been their captain for the last 2 years, really, but now it's official. He leads on the ice by example. Off the ice, he's an incredible spokesman, beloved in our community. Can't say enough about him. And even just in their recent win against Dallas in overtime, he said, Michael Backlund and the leadership group has done an incredible job with this room, especially in helping us believe that we can come back anytime, and they have been. So he's full marks for him.
Last question, just because Flames fans have been wanting a new arena for a long time. Just where do you see that with, obviously we don't have to get into politics, but the party that wants the new arena has that kind of set up. Just what update on that kind of situation?
Yeah, yeah. It's sorry, my dog's barking because I
No,
gotta
no,
go here. But
it's all good.
the arena's coming. Finally, politically, everything lined up. They've got it coming. They'll break ground sometime in 2024, probably in the summer, and it'll be a 3 or 4 year build from there. It's a tremendous relief for an organization that obviously needed it, and it's going to be a huge thing for this city to help develop the downtown.
Well, you need like the biggest press seat in at the new arena, Eric. And thanks
Ha!
so much for coming on and taking the time. Anything you want to plug at Sportsnet other than your dog before I let you
Yeah,
go?
that's my dog Turner. Anyway, yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate the opportunity to come on. Always good to chat with you. Let's do it again soon, my man.
For sure. Take care. Have a good one.